Stefan, what are your thoughts? Is it art?
Let me set the record straight for a minute.
It's quite funny how psychology works into our work with people, which people often underestimate. It's when you have, especially me shooting in the studio most of the time, if I have the music cranking and it's a good beat, those photos are upbeat. If I want to get it down a notch, all I have to do is turn the music off. It's unbelievable. You call it the silence. I just call it the void of no input. So now the person has to fill that void, rather than before the music filled that void. The music gives you the beat, and depending on what kind of music you play, and then you switch it off, and now it's this nothing that now needs to be filled, and that changes the dynamics in a photo shoot completely. With photos, I have that direct connection when I deliver it. So I photograph them, I work on them in Photoshop or Capture One or whatever, and I deliver those images and I see how happy the people are, and they put it on their socials and everything like that. That's sort of like a tick in a box, but then it's also archived and I move on to the next thing. With my own music, I don't have that personal handover, and it's not like the people then put it on their Instagram and rave about it or whatever. It's sort of, it just hangs there in the air. It's out there and it hangs there. And I always felt, funny enough, I always felt more comfortable performing in productions that other people have written, because then I just put my spin on it as much as I'm allowed to. But it's always been a sort of the creative part. Nobody blame me. If it's a good song, if it's a bad song, I'm just here to give it voice. And the lyrics are not mine. The melodies are not mine. It was Andrew Lloyd or whoever wrote it, and I'm just here to fill it. With my own stuff, I'm terribly critical. I don't think my stuff is as bad as I think it is. But yeah, I criticize myself a ton.
How do you deal with that?
I go back analog. Yeah, it sounds real strange. I come from I'm 57 years old. I come from a time when everything was analog. We had reel to reel, we had analog photography, film, and you could only run so many generations of putting something from one tape to the other before it was useless. And for me, at some point, you had to be okay with it to let it go, because there were limitations. Now with digital ones and zeros, you can bounce it as many times around. You can do edits. You can open old projects. I have to limit myself so that I cannot go back. At some point, I had to put a nail in it, and I do so by analog. I'm back to a lot of analog gear, where I have to make a decision and then it's burned in. The perfection that we are seeking is so stupid when you think about it, because
it is stupid.
Like Dark Side of the Moon, let's take that album, or the Black Album by Queen, or whatever. They were produced on analog gear with all the hiss and all the harmonic distortion and everything that came with it. And at some point, they went out, and people around the globe still today, 2024, are listening to those albums. And the moment it's on that Revox tape or whatever it is, it's done. It's out with all the hiss and all the noise and all the whatever, and we love it. I'm pretty sure when you look at interviews of, let's say Sting or Phil Collins or all those people, they would have something to complain about every single song that we listen to up and down.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And so what is it that we, just because we now can, fiddle around with that stuff so much? And it applies to photography as well. The amount of time that we spend in Photoshop fixing the tiniest little things, and then we're stupid and put it on Instagram where it's this big and it lasts for exactly 2 seconds before people swipe past it. And we spend 5 days on creating an art piece which should be in a gallery, and it got 1.5 seconds of attention on a tiny little screen. I think the red tape that we had for a very long time, that is a good thing that is cut. So everybody, even on a relatively small budget, can produce something. Remember in the days when everything was film or you had to go into a recording studio, a lot of people with incredible talent never had a chance. They couldn't because of financial background. Now, I think that limit with social media, everybody can self-publish. If you have an idea and you have the tiniest little laptop, secondhand, and you have some kind of text editor, you can write a book. You can self-publish it. So that limitation, that is no longer there. I think that's a great thing. I know some old photographers, some friends of my age, they all, some of them hate it because, they're taking our job away. So, this guy is doing a wedding for $500, blah, 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 blah. So, well, you know what? Become an accountant if you have problems with that. But I think it's great that those limitations are out of the window, that everybody has a chance now.
What are your thoughts on AI, on the use of AI?
It's difficult for me because it's 2024. If you ask me this in 2026, it will be a very different story, because we've seen over the last year the capabilities of AI explode. And I'm really, really careful making statements now, because if it continues on that huge trajectory upwards, I'm wondering where we are in 2 years. But because I'm doing a lot of stage presentations, public speaking, workshops, I started to separate two things in my head. I talk about images and I talk about photographs. And what AI creates is images. What we photographers create are photographs. And in my head, I put them in two different buckets. And for me, a photograph is something that was created in a real life scenario, while an image can be graphic design, it can be AI, it can be Photoshop, anything and I keep those two buckets separate. Now, at what point, and that's why I say in 2026, I have a feeling that those two buckets are going to be really much overlapping. At the moment, I look at an AI created image and it's still in the image bucket. It's not a photograph, and I can tell.
No.
Where are we in 2 years from now? If that direction continues, those buckets might be so overlapping that it's extremely hard to tell. Photoshop has just released a new beta. The quality is still crap. If you zoom in 100%, because I'm creating these massive original files and photographs. Now I open them in Photoshop. Now I want that technology that they have to be to my advantage, because I rather be in front of people having a laugh than being in Photoshop by myself.
Right.
So I want the AI to take those things off my shoulders. So let's say clean a backdrop, or remove dirt on the floor, or there's an ugly tree in the background which could be a nice tree, which takes away from the subject. The moment I do this, it looks great in social media. Once you zoom in, it's pixelated. It's not there yet. The quality on really big prints is not there yet. Give it another 2 years and we will be there. I have a problem with it. I know this is a very long spiel. I have a problem with the people who are against it, because this is like the horses, and they're no longer on the streets. Everybody is driving a car. AI is here to stay, if you like it or not, and it will only get more powerful. Where I have a problem, and that's the only last comment that I make, because I'm already talking too much, is when I have a model walk into my studio and I look at her and I don't recognize her, because all her photos on Instagram are face tuned, are demorphed, are this and that and the other, which this is where we are at the moment, where everybody is putting so much stuff on. That's why I'm perfectly fine with dirty glasses, old bags under my eyes, hair loss, being on camera. I really don't care. We'll see where it all goes. I mean, we had the exact same conversations about the first sample libraries that came out for music creation.
That's true. Yes, we did.
had the same conversations when reel-to-reel tapes disappeared and hard drive recording came in. When we went from 24 tracks to unlimited tracks in the DAWs that we're using now. Then people started to emulate or create emulations of hardware. I mean, who can afford a Pultec or even find a Pultec compressor or EQ these days? It's nearly impossible to find one, even let alone afford it. Well, now you can get a $60 plugin that sounds pretty much the same. So that evolution, that forward going into possibilities, is not going to stop. And if people complain about this, it might be fear, like you say. It might be that I don't know, they might fall into this trap of comparing what they are doing to what other people are doing, because this is something that you and I discussed years and years and years back. If people would only focus on themselves rather than everything else, they would come to their own style. I always say, you don't find style finds you, and that comes from doing. And the more you do something, over time you look back and go like, hold on, I just realized that over the last few years, all my photos have a similar feel to it. There's similar color palette, similar harmonies, like you called it. Oh, look, I think style found me. Everything in my life that allows me to do things the way I enjoy it the most is a big thumbs up. Whoever invented the fridge, the coffee machine, whatever it is that makes my life more enjoyable, I'm say yay. And if AI helps me to do mundane jobs quicker, then I'm all for it. If I photograph an entire ballet school of 15 and 16-year-olds, do you know how many pimples and acne I have to retouch? If there is AI that takes care of that, hallelujah. As long as the AI is smart enough to separate between, is something a birthmark, is something an acne, is something natural that persists, or is something dayform, because that's where I separate my retouching. Something permanent stays, dayform changes. So I want the perfect skin that is natural. I don't like plastic fantastic. But this is very, very time-consuming work in Photoshop. If I have an AI who can do that for me, hallelujah.